Good evening, everybody. Dallas, thanks for being here. We're going to talk about the Snowball Derby, Winter Derby, as iRacing likes to call it, with the super late models at Five Flags. So anybody who's getting ready for that event this weekend, this will be a good listen. And if you're in the chat with us right now while we're doing this live, we've got a pit party that just went up live in our leagues area on iRacing. So make sure you join the league on iRacing, the Majors Garage League, and they'll give you access to all of our pit parties any old time. So, Dallas, kind of give us a brief overview of, or a not brief overview of the Snowball Derby and what strategy-wise, technique-wise, anything you think people should know.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, it's I think one of the best short track events of the year in terms of super late models here on iRacing, or even real life for that matter. It pretty much runs adjacent to the real life one here in a few weeks, but 300 laps around Five Flags Speedway. I think I know the sim time is 1 p.m. start, so it will be pretty warm, and I believe we're looking at about a 30 car field, so it's going to be dicey out there. Attrition is the name of the game. Oftentimes, the fastest car does not win in these events. They often are the most frustrated cars, though. The underrated part of this race usually comes down to the strategy. A lot of people overlook it just looking for speed, or in that case, just trying to survive the race. You got to be there at the end. But a lot of it comes down to when you make that final strategy call as far as how your race turns out, and if it's a good result or a bad result. So there's a lot that can happen. 300 laps goes by pretty quick, but it's going to feel like you're out there for a while. Hopefully everyone has some fun, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in the real race, it's like you can't tell the difference between the front pack and the back pack, or any pack, because it's just the whole track is one big pack. I imagine the sim will be very similar. You talked about strategy. What are some different strategy options, and what are some triggers that might decide for you to go one way or another, whether you're doing a fuel strategy, what you're going to do with your tires. I know there's only 4 tire sets, etc. So what makes you decide what you're going to do strategy-wise?
Yeah, so I mean, I've always really attacked this race the same way, and that's you start with as much fuel as you can possibly pack into it, and if you get early cautions, you just keep packing it in. It's ultimately a strategy play from the get-go, and any speed that you have is just pretty much, sandbagging it for the end, saving it for the end for when you're hopefully there. Of course, when you're under green, you're trying to make up positions and get track position, but every time I've ran these races, it's never the fast guys that have all the speed that are making all the moves that win. It's whoever makes the strategy call at the right caution, takes the right amount of fuel to get to the end, and then gets out front and can hold everybody off. So that's what I'm looking for, is burn as much fuel as early as possible so I don't have to take it later. Right. That's less time that you're going to be spending in the pits on that last stop. And so that's my whole strategy when I'm addressing these races, is that last stop as short as possible, and in hopes to gain as much track position as I can on that stop. Hopefully it's under caution. At least they usually are. If not,
yeah,
hopefully.
Right.
Yeah, and that's the other aspect of the strategy, though, right? Is if you have more fuel than everybody else, and you do get a long enough green flag run, and you have to stop under green, being the last one to do that is a huge advantage, especially if you get a caution or something like that. So it just opens the door. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it opens the door for so many options. And you don't limit yourself. If you box yourself in too early by starting with lower fuel or something like that, you're really limiting yourself what you can do in the race. Because once that green flag drops, you never know what's going to happen. Maybe you got to change something up. So taking as much fuel as you can to start and focusing on that is a pretty safe bet to set yourself up for later in the race.
Right. Trying to mitigate going laps down. So kind of on that theme, you said you want that last stint to be as long as possible. What are you thinking? Like how many laps? I mean, the race is 300 laps. What are you hoping for? Ideally in a last stint.
Yeah, I'd say you want to. Historically, it's between 150 laps to go is when the winner pits. Um, if you're within 50 and you pit, you usually don't have enough time to get back to the leader because there'll be cautions or there'll just be too many cars between you and the leader to get there.
Mhm.
So if you're around 75 to go, that's kind of the ballpark range. I'd say 20 laps either side is like the
Mhm.
Goldilocks zone. Where if you pit there, you put on your either last full set of tires or two tires is an option, which we can definitely get into. But you make that last stop around then, and you're good. Your pit crew's packing up and going home
Right,
at that
right.
point.
Cool. So let's say you've packed it full throughout the race, any chance you get, and you've got a set of tires left or more, and you get to that 100 laps to go range, but the race is under green. Do you just hold out for the next caution? Do you run it as long as you can, or are the new tires going to be beneficial enough in that last 100 laps that you definitely want to pit somewhere in that 75 to 100 range?
I'd say ideally you'd like to pit, but if you have the fuel, definitely go, because if you go laps down and you could have stayed out and you get a caution or something, you're going to be kicking yourself. So, if you run out of fuel, obviously you got to come down, right? But if you can keep going, try to catch that caution, and then hopefully you don't have to be in the stall as long as the guys around you once everyone's coming down pit road.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Um, Awesome. As far as pitting, and this whole, I know we're talking a lot about like pit strategy, but I think that's going to be pretty important. If you're pitting under caution, which is the ideal time to pit, obviously, but I know if you don't do it right, there's a chance you can go a lap down, just pitting normally. So what's the strategy or technique to avoid that happening?
Pretty much take two tires.
Okay.
A full. I think it's last I checked, it's like the top 5 or top 6 are the only ones who can take a full 4-tire stop without and fuel without going a lap down or having issues with that. So it's take 2 tires. You're taking 2 rights, your fuel, and you're going. Left side tires haven't trended to really wear a whole lot in my testing so far. So you're probably not going to have to worry about taking those very often, which is going to help handling and everything in that regard with as far as heat cycling. So that'll actually help in 2 ways. One, on-track handling, as well as just making sure you're not going a lap down if you're not in that front half of the field where they have to worry about that.
Right, exactly. So, I think that's really, I just want to underscore that for anybody that might be listening. Um, if you're at the back of the pack, and a lot of times the pit lane will open even before you've caught the field, depending on how the caution falls. You have to be really careful about pitting, when you're deep in the field or you haven't actually caught the train, because I think even then you might go a lap down. If you're at the front of the field, obviously you're right. Do what you want. Take 4 tires, take 2. But if you're at the back, you have to be really uber aware of where that pace car is and how many seconds you have to get in and out, because going a lap down under caution is not fun. Okay, so that's sort of pit strategy, tire strategy, end of race strategy. That's all awesome. What about adjustments? So let's say you're practicing a setup, and what adjustments would you recommend somebody make to dial it in for themselves?
Yeah, well, just starting on pit road first, you don't have a lot of adjustments there. You just have the right rear offset, so you can still make some adjustments there, some wedge changes to help in race. But as far as leading up to the race, actually, let me back up. There is one more in-race adjustment in the brake bias. You will have that out there with you out on track. That is a tool that should be used actively as needed. When you're out there on track in the heat of battle, that's really all you got. But it can make a huge difference. I mean, in handfuls of time. So don't forget about that. But as far as leading up to the race, I would say like what I'm looking for the most is comfort. Like speed is important, yes, but above all in a race like this, with how long it is and how much attrition there can potentially be, having comfort and having some balance throughout, 40, 50 lap run, however, um, is paramount to me. Like I value that above anything. I will sacrifice some speed if it brings me some comfort when I'm out there, dicing it up with, 30 other guys. It's going to make life a lot easier. So anything that changes that or makes you more comfortable is something that I would do. Those changes are often, cross weight adjustments, track bar adjustments, or rear spring adjustments. There's kind of a lot to unpack there, but you're pretty much doing everything in the rear for the most part. I would start with track bar. That's the easiest one to go with. The important thing to remember there is if you're going to make an adjustment, do both sides evenly. So if you're going to go up with it because you feel tight, if you're tight through the center and you got decent drive off, you can go up with it a click or two, but do it evenly on both sides. Otherwise, you start messing with some other geometries. Same way if you go the other way. As far as cross weight, I would do that with the rear perch offsets. And just I could try to explain it the way that I would recommend people do it is go and adjust their offset and then look at the cross weight at the top of the setup page, and you'll figure out which way you need to go. 1 to 2 clicks either way on cross weight, you'll notice the difference you need to make. So don't go making big swings with any adjustments. 1, 2 clicks. I would even say just 1 to start to get, if you're not familiar with changes, just to kind of get your feet wet, and then go out there and try it. Get a really good idea for what that one change did for you, and then maybe later down the road if oh, this is the change that I need, and you can kind of build that arsenal of different changes you can make to make sure that it's handling the way you like. I put out sets based on what feels good to me. That's not the same for everyone. So having a simple tool set of how to make those changes to get it closer to what each individual person likes, can be a lot more success tied to that.
Sure, absolutely. And the good news is that obviously laps go by quick at this track, so you can get you can tweak a lot and hopefully fine tune what you like. The last thing that I thought would be interesting for people would be the evolution of both the track and the weather. You mentioned that the start time is 1 o'clock. It's obviously December in Florida, so it should be getting duskish by the time you get to the end of the race. I would imagine the track will be cooling, but certainly rubbered in. What how will the driving change for people as we approach the latter stage of the race?
Yeah, that's always a pretty big question mark, and some of it depends on the amount of cautions and whatnot. I mean, if you go green flag to flag, it's honestly a pretty quick race. But if you have a lot of cautions, that's 30, 45 minutes maybe later. So it gets dicey. The line evolution, I wish I could say moves around more. Typically, you're fighting for the bottom the whole race. The top isn't somewhere you want to be. Maybe with this revered, maybe not revered, but with this old refresh coming, maybe that'll change a bit. But yeah, you're mainly going to be wrapping the bottom. That's the place to be. Start of the race, end of the race. You'll notice the track. Go ahead.
No, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say you'll notice the track change, and it'll feel a little bit different. To say it's gonna get looser or tighter ultimately kind of depends on the setup and how the line that you're driving and so forth. So it's hard to say for sure. The track will rubber in quite a bit though, and if you have a lot of caution, your tires are gonna heat cycle, so it'll probably tighten up in most regards. So just keep that in mind with any changes. Well, not to mention that is the nature of these cars in general, though, is to tighten up over the run. So combined with the fact that it is going to get cooler as the race goes on, just bear that in mind.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I saw you mention the run the bottom thing on the setup as well. And is that a speed thing mostly, a safety thing mostly, both? Um, if you were looking to survive the first 200 laps of the race, is bottom still what you recommend, or is there any benefit in staying up top, or what do you think there?
I think you run the bottom for safety as well. You know, with how many cars are going to be out on track and how you're running 16, mid 16s, as far as lap times. So you're going fast. You got a lot of cars around you. Ultimately, you just might be kind of SOL either way. But like I think the bottom is your best bet. You know, a lot of times when I see people get spun on the bottom, they spin right on the line, and then everyone just kind of stacks up. But
Right.
um, at least there, everyone stacks up and you're already there, so you don't get the high contact speed. You're just kind of getting shoved all over the place. But the nice thing there is that these cars are pretty robust, so they can take a pretty good beating without being uh, you know too battered. What you have to be careful of is if the steering isn't straight. As long as the steering is straight, you're good. You'll retain 90% of the speed the car has. Like, you can take some pretty big shots to the car. As long as the steering is straight, you're still a competitor. You still got a chance to win.
Cool. That's awesome. Well, I think that is a lot for everybody to digest. So that's awesome. I appreciate it, Dallas. And I know you want to get into the session. So we'll see if anybody's got any questions real quick, and then we'll jump into the pit party. And again, if you want to join the Majors Garage pit parties, just make sure you're a member of the Majors Garage League in iRacing, and we have them pretty much every week in different cars. So it's a great time just to come out and run with everybody. Oftentimes the coach is involved. All right, I'm gonna let you go, Dallas. Appreciate it. Awesome.
Alrighty, sounds good. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks all.